Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, they didn't adapt to the industry that they were being brought into. They sort of were like, we don't like this capitalistic structure that we're seeing. Let's go create something else. And speaking to George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola specifically, they came out to the Bay to create their own Hollywood or something that was not Hollywood, really.
With every downturn, there's also opportunity. And I think identifying that everything in the industry is kind of cyclical. And if you have some foresight as to where things may be going in the future, right now we've got some momentum in the independent film space.
The industry isn't structured to reward folks who wait. So really it's about creating the opportunity for yourself.
The assumption that they have is that it's going to mean just as much to the person watching it as it meant to the person making it. Is it going to hold somebody's attention from the first minute to the final minute as a standalone piece?
And compete with everything else that's out there that's compelling. Your phone, YouTube. So you're competing against all things at the most competitive time for attention in the history of humanity.
Everybody in Hollywood is talking about obsession and backrooms and how these two movies are reinventing the system. But the truth is, we've seen this before. Today on the Indie Playbook.
Lately, Hollywood's been in a state of crisis. Film production has gone way down, and work has dried up for myself and for my colleagues.
My wife and I did the thing that any logical person would do in that situation.
I put my house on the line and I launched my own production company to make movies called Flashback Pictures.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Indie Playbook. As you know, I'm Grace Porras, the COO of Flashback Pictures, joined here by Daniel, CEO and founder of Flashback Pictures, and creative guy extraordinaire, Dominic Russo. Super excited to dive in with you guys. On our last episode, we talked a lot about, this YouTuber phenomenon that we're not calling a phenomenon because it has happened before and it is not anything new, but really just like the temperature of what's been released recently and the things that are being created from that engine. And so, we've had internal conversations about what that means for today's day, and we want to bring that conversation to the forefront by bringing some historical information here. We've done a lot of research on, the history of some well-known or not so well-known names like Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and really just talking about what they were able to create in their time and how that sort of like mirrors what's happening right now and how we see the industry reacting right now. Before we dive in, just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to any feelings after having announced our big CFC tax credit award means we're making a movie this year. Any topical feelings you guys have?
Yeah, the reception has been exciting. We've had a lot of reach outs of folks congratulating us, and also a lot of questions like, what does this mean? And how do I do it? And the reality is we don't have the answer to either of those questions yet. It remains to be seen just how this all plays out, but certainly is exciting that we were able to secure the California tax credit for $375,000 for time windows. And, now we're just putting our heads to the ground and trying to make the best damn movie we can at the budget that we have. So yeah, super excited to just start filming in October.
I would say, every time I've pitched and sold a project, you spend so much of the process telling people how great your project is. And then finally someone says, okay, let's do it. Let's spend a buttload of money on this thing. And then you kind of go, oh shit, can we make it? Is it good? Is it going to suck? And then you start going into the next phase of the process, which is for me, apprehension. You don't want your thing to be crappy. Yeah. And so now I think about the script and the story and the actors and go okay, we have this great opportunity to make this thing. Let's not screw it up. Let's make it the best thing we can make it. So that's the next fun level of stress. Every step is stressful. Wait till we show it live and then we'll freak out again.
And we just had a call earlier today, actually, with Catherine Reese, who's the author of Time Windows. And, that's the other challenge with this is when you're adapting a book, there's a book and there's people, sometimes there's an audience that is familiar with the book and their expectations are a certain way. And certainly the author wants the book to be, as direct of a representation of the book as possible. And sometimes, when you're taking a novel and you're trying to adapt it into a 100-page screenplay, there's certain things that you can do and other things that you can't. And, the difference between a book and a film is really that, in a book, you can write descriptions, you can talk about what people are thinking, you can provide backstory and context for things within the descriptions. And in a film, you only have what people are watching, what people see on screen. And so there are some areas that, need to be adjusted and changed. And also tonally, we're trying to make something that's maybe a bit more fun, a bit more tapping into more of like a Goonies or like a Stranger Things type of vibe. Yeah, these are the challenges that come with it, but also like that's part of what makes this process so cool too.
I think what I'm hearing too is like we're creating in sort of like an engine and in a system that already exists, but trying to like make the audience feel something different. And back to Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, all of these well-known folks in the industry that they didn't adapt to the industry that they were being brought into. They sort of were like, we don't like this capitalistic structure that we're seeing. Let's go create something else. And speaking, to George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola specifically, they came out to the Bay to create, their own Hollywood or something that was not Hollywood, really, by establishing, a footprint here to be able to just really be the creators that they wanted to be and not to be sucked up by the engine. And so, that sort of speaks to the ethos of Flashback of like, we know that the system is broken. We know we have important and really interesting stories to tell and share. How do we take what we know from what has worked in the past and also our experiences as filmmakers, as creators, as writers, directors, working in the trade, and use that to create something different and to create something that we feel like audiences are hungry for.
Yeah, there was an interesting story that came out recently that touched on, the backgrounds of these filmmakers that you mentioned. Each of them has their own separate story. I know that, Spielberg was a little more, I think there's a story of him like sneaking onto the Universal backlot and, getting onto a set that way. And he was making films on his own, since he was a little kid. And when he started making like Jaws, it just was not clear necessarily that there was going to be an audience for it. It was definitely a big risk, sort of once that first one came out and it was clear that people were jumping on board, they realized that audiences were starving for original ideas. And that's, again, what we're sort of seeing today.
Everyone thinks the system is broken, but I don't understand what the non-broken version of the system ever was. It's not like graduate school where there's like a set level of courses you take and then you get a movie. I think these guys figured out a way to be successful on their own without waiting in a line or I don't know. I mean, I think everyone's kind of gone through the exact same struggle of like, how the hell do you make this thing work? I really want to make it work. And if knocking on doors doesn't work, you find another way. I think what we're saying is trying to go to a studio and pitching this movie to people that are not buying movies is probably not going to work. So let's think of another way to do it. Okay, well, we know writers. We have a great book. Let's write a great script. And then let's go apply for this tax credit that exists. And then let's go ask people for money because we have this great package. And then let's just go do it because we know how to make films. So I think we're kind of in a corner. And so we're figuring out our own way out of it. But to me, my gut tells me that's everybody's experience in some way. Like, I guess if your dad is Francis Ford Coppola, you probably get some open doors for you. But that's not most people. So you figure out a way. And that's probably where great original feeling stories and movies end up coming from.
Yeah, I think a couple of the golden nuggets that we ended up with from the first episode were create value, surround yourself with like-minded people and people that are equally passionate. And that's exactly what George Lucas did, back in the day. He went and made a movie that they weren't really sure what was going to happen with it. It turned out to be a massive success, Star Wars. And at that point, he relocated from Los Angeles to the Bay Area because he just didn't like LA. Mm-hmm. But he created a studio in the Bay Area that became Industrial Light and Magic. And not only was this a hub for him to create a visual effects company that was creating the effects for Star Wars that ended up creating the effects for a lot of these iconic movies of our youth, Jurassic Park and Back to the Future. And he created a spot where these filmmakers could come to really to make their visions a reality. Things that were not possible in the past were now possible via Industrial Light and Magic, which, went through its own sort of peak, and then another shift happened and the practical effects weren't feasible anymore and things were shifting to computers. And Lucas realized at that point he didn't really need the stage anymore. They relocated their facility to the Presidio in San Francisco and, got massive computer servers and really created the visual effects arm of Industrial Light and Magic. And that's the ILM that we know today. But the stage that they had there has now sat vacant for the past 2-3 years. And kind of side note, we actually see this as an opportunity now with independent filmmakers that are now looking for spaces to film their projects and maybe don't have the financing behind them to be able to rent a soundstage. But there's a gap to be filled there where people can come in and potentially put standing sets on these places and rent them to productions for a bargain. So I think with every downturn, there's also opportunity. And I think identifying that everything in the industry is kind of cyclical. And if you have a sense of potentially some foresight as to where things may be going in the future, right now we've got some momentum in the independent film space. So where are the opportunities going to be in the next 3-5 years?
To your point and to your question, Dom, it's really the core argument at hand right now is, that knowing that nobody, meaning Hollywood and all of the studio executives that don't live in Hollywood, are coming to save us or save anyone. And the industry isn't structured to reward folks who wait. So really it's about creating the opportunity for yourself. Like we've talked about this in previous episodes, the opportunity you created with Workaholics, with the environment that you were in and the things you had access to. Same thing we're doing here at Flashback is seeing this opportunity with time windows and seeing, a chance for us to adapt something that has value already and creating new value for it for a new audience. So that's sort of the conversation at play right now. And I think, a perfect segue into what Daniel is talking about is that a company that is rooted in the Bay Area, with Daniel's roots in the Bay and me being here and your roots in the Bay too, Dom, it's important for us to see our projects come to fruition in a place where we value, the artists that come from it too. So with the former Kerner ILM stage and seeing that as a place where now independent filmmakers can come, it's sort of like recreating or bringing back to surface what Lucas originally intended before he sold to Disney, and is creating a space for independent filmmakers so that they have somewhere to go and create their projects. Having been part of the engine and created with studios at that scale, things that you learned in that process that you take away and things that you learn in the process that you're like, I wouldn't do it that way again.
There's definitely a sink or swim attitude where you get an opportunity and it's up to you to kind of fulfill that opportunity or fail. The same year we did a Workaholics pilot, John Heater had a $1 million pilot from Comedy Central that I don't think ended up getting greenlit. And at the time he was coming off Napoleon Dynamite and he was like this hot commodity in town. And so, they threw a bunch of money that direction. It didn't work out for whatever reason. Our show they threw the bare minimum at, and we made a pilot that was very funny and felt authentic because we were those guys living that life. And then I think because it was cheap to make, they said, like, let's try it. I remember them being very hands-off creatively in a good way. Like, they didn't get involved in any kind of way aside from like helping us deal with the finances and make sure we didn't go to jail for like stealing the money or something. And then the other arm of what they really are good at doing is marketing, getting the thing in front of the people that they're investing the money in. So without that side of it, it is difficult, I think, to get the eyeballs on the thing that you're making. And we're going to be in that same situation where we're going to make a great product, and then we're going to be in a situation where it's like, well, now we need people to see it. We don't have a marketing budget. How do we get that part going? So having a studio in place, facilitates all of those things that we just don't have set up because it costs money. But there's cheaper ways to do it now, and I think there's creative ways to do it now, and we will be able to do a lot on our own.
I think the film business is at its best when the stories are good and the business side is healthy. And I think those are the things that are constantly at odds with each other. In some cases, it's more of a business than about the art. That's why it's called the film business.
Mm-hmm.
But if all the movies are the same, then people lose interest and the business side is lost. With the cyclical nature of the industry, it's oftentimes when the business side gets too much attention that you get these innovative artists that come in and they figure out a way to tell good stories, but also an effective way to do it with a strong business behind it. And however that may be, that you create value. For us, we kind of spend equal attention looking at the story and the business side of how we can create something for not as much money as you think, people will look at it as having potentially. I think it's one of the most optimistic times as an independent filmmaker because the bigger businesses are starting to pay attention to those new voices now, which means that we can just continue what we've been doing and there will be more opportunities.
Yeah, I think the onus is on us more than it has been maybe in the past to actually make the thing first. And then they're going to invest in it second after it's already successful. Less risk on their side, more risk on our side. Hopefully we get to own more of it because of that. We make them pay at the box office, baby.
No, ownership is a huge part of it because I think what we've learned from, even Ryan Coogler and the deal that he made with Sinners is like, how do we revert our ownership back to us as the creators and hold that value? Look what George Lucas did. He built an incredible legacy and then it's funny because he sold to Disney and now Disney pays him rent because he owns the buildings in the Presidio. So it's like we have to be, again, nothing new, creating the value now, and sure, they will come and they will want a piece of what we've created, and then you find a way to reap the benefits of that. And, that's way more easier said than done, but I think that's part of why we're having these conversations and figuring out, like, as we're literally laying down the bricks, but also trying to outline the roadmap so that years down the line, hopefully there's an independent filmmaker that doesn't have to reinvent the wheel or have to do, like 3 hours of research that I did to figure out, to like put all the pieces together of the George Lucases, the Steven Spielbergs of the world, because that's really what we're doing here is trying to figure out, like, how did they do it? How can we do it too?
On that note, I mean, one thing I was thinking about, because I'm a part owner of the New Parkway Theater in Oakland, which was basically a crowdfunding effort when the original Parkway Theater shut down. And so it's owned by the community. But one of the things I was thinking about is, like, one of the things we struggle with as filmmakers is that we don't often have a place to get our project shown or a way to make money off of the distribution of our project. But if we were to take, let's say, 3-4 screenings per week that we call like filmmaker screening hour, you can basically have the filmmakers market their own project and you basically get like a 50% cut as the filmmaker. I'd be interested in experimenting with a model like that in the Bay Area, where you've got quite a few independent filmmakers, talented voices that just don't simply have the ability to get their project screened and to monetize it, but to actually create a method so that they can self-market their project and also reap the rewards of that as well.
Yeah, why don't you see more very good independent films, even if they're shorts? I mean, you guys have been to festivals where you watch a bunch of sad ass, depressing as fuck movies, and you're like, ugh, I don't want to watch that again. Not to shit on everybody else but us, but
Right.
Sometimes there's an entertainment element that's missing. Like, it's still got to like be fun to watch. Like Star Wars, fun as hell. Star Wars, it's like laser beam fights in space. Like, who doesn't want to go watch that? I think that idea sounds great, Daniel, but I haven't seen it, and I've seen a lot of really great shorts, like the 20 to 30 minute window of shorts. Like there is a lot of that on Vimeo and YouTube, and you can kind of find some like great content, like great films, but for whatever reason they don't get extrapolated into like a full feature or something. But it does seem like it's hard to make an hour-long entertaining story, and you just don't see it that much, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's a good point about the entertainment value is often lost in these projects. And I think sometimes it gets masked because an artist gets, especially when it's something that's really personal to them, like it's about somebody in their life, or it's about, something they struggled with, or mental illness, or like a super serious issue that they've been impacted by. And the assumption that they have is that it's going to mean just as much to the person watching it as it meant to the person making it. And the thing that the viewer is often missing is the context that led to that initially.
Mhm.
And so you almost have to like completely blind yourself of that personal connection you had with your project and view it strictly on that piece of entertainment. Is it going to hold somebody's attention from the first minute to the final minute as a standalone piece?
And compete with everything else that's out there that's compelling. Your phone, YouTube. So you're competing against all things at the most competitive time for attention in the history of humanity. So I watched Top Gun Maverick over and over. I'm like, that's a fun movie. It's guys in planes. It's fun. It's like a fun movie. And so I get back to, and I've pitched enough projects, sold enough projects where it's like, they're going to invest a lot of time and money into something. Like they want to make sure people are going to watch it and talk about it and go, oh, that was really cool. So there's like the hook, cool, wow entertainment factor that has to kind of also be built into these projects. And if you can do it on an independent level for $1 million, like what we're doing with Time Windows, like that to me is like the explosive secret sauce that people really start to go, oh, wow, like this is a marketable, broad piece of IP that they've made that didn't cost that much. Like it doesn't have to be Marvel. Like I think we all got marveled out over the last 20 years because they forgot to tell stories or something. I don't know, too much graphics, but it's just like you disconnect. So you have to connect, it's a difficult proposition, but we're doing it, it's doable.
You're making a good point. It's like all of these dynamics at play that maybe they were different dynamics back in the day, but in today's day and age, I feel like the fight for eyeballs is one of the hardest situations to be playing in, because back in the day, at least, like people went to the movies and saw the value in that because there was some form of like escapism that folks were like longing for. I think that we can escape literally from 1 second to the next with just the device in our hand. So it's like, how do we now compete in this space? It's a different landscape to be competing in. But it all boils down to access, I think, and access to tools, access to infrastructure that allows a person to be able to tell this dynamic story that they've had in their brain that perhaps will grasp the attention of millions. And so I think that's really why I would love for us to talk about what Flashback is up to and why we really see reviving and reopening the former ILM stage at Kerner and out here in the Bay, because we see it as a play, not because we need a sound stage as a production company in the Bay. We do, but not because of that, but because of what that would mean for a community of folks who are ready, who have stories to tell, but just need the space and the infrastructure. How did that come to be? Where are we with the Kerner stage? And why wouldn't everyone be running to find a way to revive this stage?
Yeah, so 3210 Kerner is George Lucas's soundstage that he built shortly after the first Star Wars was made, and that's where the sequels were filmed. That's where the special effects company was birthed, essentially. So really a lot of legacy and history there. But as we talked about, that shifted to computers. It was no longer necessary for him to have a stage. And over time, it just was not a sustainable model to have in the Bay as production shifted following these incentives to other places. Los Angeles obviously was, has always been kind of the hub for a while, but even Los Angeles has lost a lot of that work now. As we were prepping some of our early projects and I was exploring stages in the Bay Area, I had a meeting with the San Francisco Film Commission, was asking, hey, where's a stage? We'd like to build a set to control, we're doing this special effect in a set and we need to build a set for it. And they were like, well, we're trying to convert this warehouse, but it's not soundproof and it doesn't have power. And I was just thinking back, my stepdad for 1 year worked at Industrial Light and Magic in San Rafael. He was in the human resources department, the least creative job in the film business. But there was a Take Your Kid to Work Day event. So when I was 9 years old, I went to Industrial Light and Magic, and this was in the heyday. And we sat in their theater and we watched a highlight reel of all the amazing productions that they had been a part of over the years. And we walked next door to this massive soundstage with a big blue screen on it. And they were like, yeah, we just shot Men in Black here. I was a young 9-year-old with stars in my eyes thinking about, oh man, this would be such a cool job. And so I was thinking back to that and I was like, man, there is a stage in the Bay Area, but why do they not talk about that? And so the next day I just drove up there to see if it even still existed. And sure enough, the stage was there. It was closed down. There was a fence around it, clearly vacant, but there was a sign out front that said warehouse space for lease. I have a real estate license, so I just called up and I was like, hey, I'm Daniel Cotroneo. I'm an agent looking for a space to rent. I saw the sign, is this available? And so the agent came out and met Dominic and myself and took us on a tour through the old ILM studio. It was, talk about a full circle moment, sitting in that same theater where I had seen this, this screening years ago that had now been gutted. They completely gutted the space, ripped out the seats, the equipment and everything like that. But you walk next door and the soundstage itself is like fully intact, pristine. You could go in there and film tomorrow. I think Freaky Tales was the last film that shot there. So that kicked off the process of me trying to figure out how the heck we can come up with a business model to make this work. And, unfortunately, we spent about 4 or 5 months of back and forth and negotiations, weren't able to figure out a business strategy that worked, but we haven't given up hope yet. And I think, if signs are any indication as far as the way that the Bay Area has been green lighting these tax incentives and trying to bring more filmmakers back to the Bay Area, we've continued to track that. We've continued to stay in touch with the agent there. We're now working with another real estate agent on helping to build out a lease model that works for both sides. But we feel that that is like the easiest plug and play solution for a soundstage in the Bay Area at the moment. And I feel like it's just a matter of time before we figure out a solution that works. The most recent model that we're looking at is one that keeps the main stage vacant and rentable so that productions can come in there and build sets, but the smaller stage, the former theater, would actually be standing sets that you build out. So things that people shoot on, the most common sets, apartments or a cafe or a jail or a hospital or, whatever it may be, so that it is a more affordable solution for an independent filmmaker to just come there to just shoot, and you can have a steady stream of income coming in as the leasee or leaseor.
This is what we do, right? Identify undervalued assets and create value from there. So I'm very excited about that. I think that we don't realize the impact that having a soundstage in the Bay will mean for productions, even productions that are producers, filmmakers that are not based here, that are considering the Bay, and knowing that we'd have a soundstage changes the dynamic completely and gets more folks here, and then, in turn gets our workforce back on set. And so a lot of kudos there.
Yeah, and I think if the numbers are any indication, I think, some people, the naysayers, will point to the fact that, Los Angeles has hundreds of sound stages and 60% plus are vacant right now. And yeah, sure, you could look at it that way, but you could also look at it from the perspective of the Bay Area has just released the most lucrative tax incentive in the country. And there is a huge burgeoning film community in the Bay Area right now and exactly 0 sound stages. I think with the infrastructure in place of even a single sound stage as a start point, it would create a massive ecosystem for the Bay Area to be a hotspot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to dive right into some rapid fire questions, I know we've been talking about a lot here, but to break it down for our listeners, what is a soundstage? We've been talking about a soundstage. What does that even mean? Why does a production need a soundstage when you can just film on the street down the way right here?
Control. It all comes down to control. You can control the sound, you can control the lights, you can control, what you can build, whatever you want on there. So it creates a mini environment for you to be able to control as a filmmaker.
It's a warehouse that's soundproof. So there's other warehouses that house Amazon supplies, not soundproof. This has soundproof walls. So from build up, it's built in a way that reduces noise. So that's one. You mentioned power earlier, Daniel. Electricity, there's all types of electricity, baby. When you're hooking in 1,000 lights, you need a shitload of amps. And so these buildings are built with amps in mind. So they are electrically hooked up, which costs about $1 million, whatever more. So they're set up for all of these, with all of these engineered into the building. And then from there, climate control, sound control. They have giant doors so you can drive a truck in and bring gear in and all these things. And then all the lights and all the stuff lives there full time. So when you want a light, there's 1,000 right there. So it's all there and ready to use for ultimately control, what is control in the movie business? Budget, schedule. So you can shoot. You're never going to get an airplane flying over your head and you have to cut, or it's never going to rain. You're never going to have a homeless guy is going to charge you $25 to stop screaming on the corner, because that's what happens in LA. So like all of those elements that when you're shooting in the wild that can slow you down and ultimately cost you money are now behind the wall, and you can control that stuff. So yeah, building a hospital, a fake hospital inside is cheaper than finding a real hospital and shooting at it. Full of rats, no toilets, can't flush. Every location we ever go to, they're like, you can use the toilet, but don't flush anything. Every time, right?
I think our creative guy has some trauma that he needs to process.
Every time I've rented a space, they're like, the toilet's going to flood. And you're like, fuck. I'm like, what are people putting down there? Lasagnas or something? Every single time. Like nobody has plumbing. So our studio will have, you can flush lasagna. That's another thing. It's another asset.
Garfield will be very happy.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody sent catering down the drain.
Yes. And there's a green room, and you can hang out, and you can get change, and you can do your makeup.
I think we got to just start calling our rapid fire questions just questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love
Well,
it.
there's
Now we're going to get to our question section of the podcast.
I think there's a difference between a warehouse and a soundstage, and I don't think most people
Absolutely.
understand the specifics. So you've all learned something. Thanks for watching.
Yes.
That's it. One
Keep it.
question.
Golden nugget of the day.
Flashback Golden Nugget.
And then the Bay Area has 0 of those. You already said that. So if you're doing the movie making or commercial making math, that's crazy. So that's the opportunity. And there's one that exists with the walls and the electricity and the giant toilets. It's already there. So
Absolutely. Okay, one more question. What is a tax credit or a cash rebate? And those two are examples of film incentives.
A rebate is a way to incentivize film productions to shoot in a place. So the theory is that when a film production shoots in a place, it stimulates the entire economy. You have people that get hired, you have construction that needs to happen, you have food that needs to be eaten, things that need to be consumed, hotels. So the governments actually give you money. They say, if you spend X number of dollars here, we're going to give you X number of dollars back, assuming that the positives for them outweigh the money that they would spend.
And in recent years, other countries, other governments have made those incentives more lucrative than staying in California. So everyone has left California to go chase the rebates elsewhere, Europe, London, but other states in the United States, Georgia, name your place. So California finally on the brink of collapse is like, maybe we should do something about it. And maybe it's too late. Maybe it's not. Hopefully it's not. But they're now offering these rebates that people can, so California keeps their business in California, because otherwise it already left and they're trying to get it back.
Trying to call production home.
And people would rather stay home.
Yeah, always. Our favorite way to end the podcast is to hear a set story from Daniel's mouth and mind. an experience that you've had on a set that you want to share with us today. Do you have something for us today?
Yeah, today we're going back to Star Trek Into Darkness, J.J. Abrams. So we were filming at the Howard Hughes hangar in Los Angeles, the place where they built the Spruce Goose. I think it's currently owned by Google. But back then, it was a film studio, and we had our spaceship sets there. We also had an entire parking lot that became a volcano set. So we were doing a night exterior there. However, the best boy who does the hiring failed to mention to some of our crew members that it was going to be a night shoot. So several of the folks that came on had other jobs that they had to go to the following day. So we're all arriving on set, getting suited up. They're testing the volcano, getting ready for this big fight. My buddy Matt Kubis comes in and is like, "Hey, I didn't realize this was a night shoot. I have a 6 a.m. call tomorrow." And they're like, "Okay, don't worry. The first scissor lift that goes up, we're going to put you in it. Just grab your sleeping bag. You're going to be fine." They call the first scissor lift in. He goes up, pops up there, gets settled. He's about 30 feet in the air. But he gets the scissor lift that's actually located right next to the volcano. And so they get everything set up. They start rolling. The action goes. They're like, "Okay, guys, bring in the helicopter." A helicopter comes in, starts doing figure eights, like right on top of Matt Kubis's scissor lift. You just see the scissor lift starting to like tip back and forth in this like tornado vortex that's happening up there. And we're shooting on IMAX. So the thing is, you only get about 45 seconds per mag. So we basically only have one take each time. And then they have to go land the helicopter over at the Playa Vista beach, reload the camera, and then bring it back over again. So we ended up doing about 15 takes of this massive helicopter fight sequence stunt with a volcano. And all you see is Matt Kubis's little eyeballs like sticking up over the side of his scissor lift. And he didn't get 1 wink of sleep that night.
Hilarious.
Production is like work. It's like having a job in the military too. Like, I think people don't realize, like, you're signing up for pain and suffering for a lot of hours straight. And hopefully the money's good. That's why all the crew guys wear tactical pants, because you just never know when you're going to need shorts. You know what I mean?
Pockets. You need lots of pockets.
You need pockets. You need zip-off pants. You need straps galore. It's like being in the Marine Corps without the guns.
That's the secret. Tactical pants.
That's it.
That's it.
Golden nugget number
That's it.
2. Just
Tactical
wear tactical
pants.
pants. All your problems will be solved. Flashback, golden nugget.
Amazing. I love this. Thank you guys for imparting all of your wisdom and knowledge and experience today. Super excited that in the next episode, we're going to be talking about film financing and how you actually get the thing made.
Oh man, I can't wait to tune in for that. I can't wait to learn. It's gonna be awesome.
It's like I'm gonna go to school now. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.